The earliest recorded utility locators and mappers came from Australia. Aboriginal rock art has been dated to around 30,000 years ago. Australian Aboriginal peoples left artwork noting meeting places, campsites, rain, rivers, water, watering holes, mountains, windbreaks, sandhills, animal tracks, and of course, settlements. The first known underground water mains were constructed by the ancient Minoan civilization between 2200 and 1400 BC. They used rock. In the 16th century, technology had improved to wooden pipes for water mains, but the issue with those was they weren't very durable due to rotting, and they attracted bugs. So they were gradually replaced by lead pipes in the early 1800s, but those too offered challenges. Lead poisoning. Eventually, lead pipes were outlawed in most countries and replaced by cast iron. In the late 19th century, the city of New York endured a blizzard. 21 inches of snow, over 53 centimeters. The city, like most American cities at the time, had entered the era of electric illumination and the telephone. But all that snow wreaked havoc on not just the electric lighting, but wires belonging to police and fire departments, as well as burglar alarm companies. They were all draped from overhead poles. Terrified New Yorkers stayed indoors for fear of being electrocuted by a falling, energized overhead line. Now, this wasn't good. So a short time later, the mayor required all overhead cables be placed underground. Society had become connected, but for safety and aesthetic reasons, we didn't want to see those connections anymore. If we're going to bury them and we're going to dig into the ground on other projects, we need to know where those utilities are. Technology for locating buried utilities goes back to the early 19th century, relying on radio frequencies. And by the Second World War, a patent was obtained for an aircraft radio detection finder called the metalloscope, the first high-performance buried pipe and cable locating kit. As technology and mapping has progressed, we've moved into a world where buried utilities are geomapped, and for the most part, we just need to contact our local one-call service to place markings so we know where not to dig. But that communication is now changing too. One call is becoming one click in most places. Today, on Stories and Strategies, it's such a simple message to click before you dig. We talk with one of the world's leading authorities on buried infrastructure and how to turn that simple message into a call to action. My name is Doug Downs. My guest this week is Mike Sullivan of Utility Safety Partners in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Warming up in Calgary. The snow has melted. How are things?
Up and down like I can't say that. I was going to say like a toilet seat in a co-ed washroom.
No, it's perfect. It's a podcast. You can get away with anything.
Yeah, no, it's typical Calgary, right? We don't know what we're going to get. That's why it's called May, because it may rain, it may be hot, it may be snowing, it may be anything.
That's perfect. Mike, you're the president of Utility Safety Partners. Your experience in damage prevention goes back 30 years with the National Energy Board and Alliance Pipeline in Canada. You also have considerable experience developing emergency response management training and audit systems in a regulatory, operations, and consulting capacity. And you're the past president of the Canadian Common Ground Alliance. Mike,
I am, yep.
Just so everyone is familiar with the service that we're talking about here, you represent in Alberta what in the United States is 811.
That's right.
The various states, 811. UK and Australia, do they call it call before you dig? What are the terms?
Actually, in Australia, it's dial before you dig.
Oh.
However, they are like 99% on the web, so it's kind of a interesting thing there. I mean, they the contractors will say, "Hey, have you got your dials?" And they're actually everything's on the web.
Well, whatever works, right?
Whatever works, right? Exactly.
Okay. So this is you're the so-called one-call service in Alberta.
For Alberta, we provide the same service to Saskatchewan and Manitoba. We don't need bricks and mortar to do this anymore. There was a time when that was absolutely the case, not so long ago, when we needed bricks and mortar to do that. And that's just not the case anymore.
Okay. Pretty simple message. And this is what I want to get into in this podcast. Just don't dig until you've had locate markings done, right? Call or...
Yeah, pretty simple, very straightforward. Especially here in Alberta, I think people are born knowing previously to call before you dig, and it's now click before you dig. It doesn't get any simpler than that, and yet we still encounter far too many damages every year by people who didn't. When they do that, they initiate a damage prevention process that really is tried and tested and true millions of times over the decades, and refined and improved. And all it takes is to initiate that damage prevention process. And when it doesn't happen, you're messing things up for no reason whatsoever.
Okay, as Comms Pros, one of the first things we do is break it down into audience here. Two key audiences. One is contractors. These are the folks working, I guess, the backhoes, the big diggers.
Well, they dig for a living, right?
They dig foundations for homes, big buildings, all kinds of things. And then homeowners. Tell me about the statistics here. So who's not listening to the message, and what are the stats showing?
Well, let's be really clear. The contractors, they get a bad rep because they think, they're all a bunch of cowboys. They don't do what they're supposed to do, and that's not the case at all. Contractors, these are professional workers. This is what they do for a living. They dig for a living. Do accidents happen? Do mishaps happen? Yes, they do, unfortunately. But because they dig so much, it looks like they're the cause of all the damages. And from a percentage perspective, really, they're really doing very well. They are our partners in safety. And the homeowners, they may dig once every 10 years, maybe once in a lifetime. And do they know to request a locate? Despite the advertising we do, we spend about $350,000 to $400,000 a year on radio and other advertising alone across the province. And that's just us. Now, many of our members also promote damage prevention and click before you dig, and because they're mandated to by their regulator. So despite all of that, we still see damages every year.
And what were the stats? I think you've told me contractors are up in that high 90% range, and I don't remember the stat for the homeowner segment.
Oh, in terms of online locate requests?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so our contractors and our members, so those are the actual owners of the buried utilities that have registered their location with us. Contractors and members are roughly 98 to 99% of all locate requests are on the web. And that is phenomenal. I can't thank them enough. And by doing that, they're actually improving the odds to reduce damages, because we've already proven that locate requests on the web are superior to those that are made by phone. And the reason is very simple. Nobody knows better where they're digging than the person digging. So if they can go online and actually show you and plot it out on a map, I'm digging here, then there's no interpretation whatsoever. Was that a street? Was that an avenue? Did I tell the agent the right thing? We see that it happens. Homeowners, they're about anywhere between 40 and 55% of their locate requests online. And again, because that call before you dig message that is embedded in the vernacular, right? We've grown up hearing that. And roughly, less than 10 years ago, we changed that to click before you dig. And it's taken time to have that embedded in the safety language across the province or even across the country.
Okay, so the call to action here has changed, at least in Alberta, and I'll ask you about other jurisdictions. It's changed from call before you dig, which you still can. It's just, as you explained, it's not as functional, and the percentage of accurate locates is impacted by that. And you've changed it to click, and now you're in the process of trying to communicate that change in call to action. You mentioned radio ads. What are some of the other ways you've tried to communicate that change in the call to action to click before, other than call?
Well, social media has been a fantastic vehicle for us. People who are online are on social media. So once you have them there, you want to keep them there. And we've had great success expanding for example, our Twitter base within Alberta. We have over 2,600 followers on Twitter, which may not sound like a lot if you're Justin Bieber with millions and all that, but
that's right.
For a safety organization, that is impressive. When I look at Alberta, and we have a population of 4.5 million people here, and with 2,600 followers, that's good. When I look at, for example, the Common Ground Alliance in the United States, with a base of 375 million people, and they have less followers than we do. We're just about the same now. They're getting close to us. So that tells me that we've done a really good job advancing that. And how we did that wasn't by accident either. We did big campaigns to bring people online, to request their locates online. For example, we had a campaign early on to win an iPad mini. Every month we had a draw. Everybody who submitted a locate request online, their name or their number got put into a draw for an iPad mini, had a random number generator, and we had a winner. And that really created that bit of a buzz. We would post that on social media. It kept going that way. And then we worked with the Edmonton Football Club and the Calgary Stampeders. That was a big boost.
These are the local Canadian football.
Yeah, the CFL, Canadian Football League. Because the demographics of the person excavating was very similar to the fan base. And whether it was homeowners or contractors, it resonated. The time of the year was perfect. And when we did that, we saw our followers increase, and we saw the online locate request percentage increase. And it's, again, been a really good scenario for us. But for sure, social media. And then you have to back that up with a website that works. It has to be intuitive. It has to work. Our electronic newsletter, is published on every month, and over 70,000 recipients get that newsletter. And it's, again, repeating a lot of the same message, but maybe a little bit of a deeper dive into the backroom efforts, if you will, for damage prevention. It's a very broad spectrum. It's not just, you click before you dig, you process a locate request, you notify, and they locate, and away you go. There's so much more beyond that. The data functions, the regulatory aspect, the best practices, the standard development. There's so much to look into that keeps improving over time. And finally, the boots on the ground. We have 3 safety ambassadors in the province, and we aim to have more. And these guys, they are rolling billboards in a sense. That has a knowledgeable person behind the wheel, meeting with do-it-yourself stores, contractors, the digging community, schools, promoting the click before you dig, where's the line, look up and live message. And that has been very successful. And each ambassador, safety ambassador, they have their own social media presence. So beyond the followers we have, they each have their own as well.
That's great. And you're exploring, you have your own podcast.
We have our own podcast, exactly.
Yeah, Prairie Podcasts. And you advertise on scoreboards at big sporting events, things like that. Yep.
You have to be out there in a variety of mediums. Many, many years ago, it was billboards and newsprint. Well, newsprint is all but dead. It's on its last gasps. And billboards are great, but you're probably getting the same traffic every day. The majority of the traffic driving by is the same people. Whereas social media, you can geofence, you can target, you can work with others like we did with the CFL football clubs. There's so much you can do. And, I need people to help me design that, because I can't understand all. I know what I want it to do and I know it can do it, but I don't know how to make it happen.
Podcasting. Now there's an idea. You listen to podcasts. Maybe a podcast is right for you or one of your clients. Stories and Strategies is a full podcast production company with clients in Canada as well as the United States, Great Britain, and Australia. If you want to chat, send me an email, doug@storiesandstrategies.ca, and we'll set up that chat. Let's talk podcasts. So you have this one key message, this one key call to action. You've diversified to provide other messages that help embellish or broaden it out. You travel to conferences globally for the same topic. Tell me about the ideas you've heard from Australians, from folks in the UK, from Americans, elsewhere in Asia. What are the ideas that are coming around?
It's interesting, very proud to have had the opportunity to represent not only Alberta but Canada globally, as you said, and I've had that opportunity. It's a very honorable and humbling thing to do. And I think Canada is a leader. Many years ago, we saw the value of the 811 brand, and it was desired to bring that into Canada. We tried. It was already allocated. That 3-digit dialing was already allocated, so we moved to the web, and it was the best thing that could have ever happened to us. We really leaped ahead. But when I go to other locations, I have 2 ears and those are open, and I only one mouth, so I keep that closed as much as I can, but because I want to hear what's going on. And for the most part, I would say we are in a very good position in Canada, neck and neck with global advancements in technology and in practice. And the people that we work with across Canada here are well recognized internationally. The software company that, the one call software that we use, the notification center software we use, is from Australia, an Australian company, Pelican Corp. We've been very lucky to work with them, and we were the first province among the Western Canadas. We had Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC. We implemented that software in parallel, in one software, one system, one approach for Western Canada. And it was a game changer for every province. It truly was. And again, these are global partners in safety doing one thing for one purpose, and that's to keep people safe.
So you have an opportunity here. Your message is, contact us before you dig. You have an opportunity here to showcase the fear message. If you don't contact us, you might die.
Yeah.
Okay. Your laughter answers the question. Actually, does that message work?
It used to be a message that we saw a lot. Back when I was working with the National Energy Board, there were pipeline companies that's the message they promoted. That it was. Here's the fire and brimstone, here's the burning equipment. And what seemed to be telling people that pipelines were dangerous. They explode. Well, that's not the message you want to tell people, because they don't. The pipelines are the safest mode of transporting hydrocarbons across vast distances. And the likelihood of damage is virtually zero if you follow the simple rules put in place to protect you. And the industry, the pipeline company or the distribution gas or telecom, electricity, they do all the heavy lifting. All you have to do is make that locate request, and they will walk you through the process, even if you have to be there or not, to keep you safe. So when the simple trigger, the simple initiating call or click to make that process happen, these things don't, you don't have fire and brimstone. You don't have that kind of thing. When they do happen, absolutely, it's catastrophic. It hits the news. But when's the last time you saw that? It just doesn't happen that often. And the vast majority of the time when it does happen is because there either was no locate request or there was an error somewhere along the line, which is very, very rare.
Okay, last question. There are holes dug without contacts made in advance for locate. Contractors, very small percentage, contractors, homeowners, agricultural, so farmers, agricultural operations. When someone doesn't contact their one-call service in advance and then digs a hole, is it, I didn't know I was supposed to, which I find hard to believe, or I thought I could get away with it this time? Which of the two?
It's probably the latter. You hear someone saying, well, I know where that buried utility is. I was here when they put it in the ground. And then they proceed to hit it. It's probably the latter more often than not. Not knowing is in this province and Western Canada really, or virtually anywhere now, but it's just not going to cut it. It's not going to fly. Now, we don't have legislation in this province that is comprehensive that says if you're going to dig, you must request a locate. And if you own buried utilities, you must have them registered so they can be found through a locate request. And we're working on that now. 40 years after launching Alberta One Call, we're still without that legislation. So there is that element that, well, if I request a locate, am I going to get everything? Because not everybody's a member. Again, that doesn't cut it, because as the person digging, you own that excavation. If you weren't digging, you would not have hit it. So you are responsible to do that. Just as I believe the utility owners are responsible. If they put something in the ground, they need to protect it. They need to register with us.
Absolutely. That's kind of stunning.
They can put a man on the moon, but they can't request it.
And what's one click costs you nothing? What's the slogan? You've actually come up with a slogan.
One click costs you nothing, and not clicking could cost you everything. And I can't underline that enough. It is the truth. It costs nothing to request a locate. And
if it's not the safety danger message, what is the actual cost to society from people hitting buried utilities?
Well, that's a really interesting question. The societal costs relative to damage are across Canada over $1 billion, or $1 billion.
Every year?
Every year. And what happens is when you look at it, if you have damage, then there's evacuations, there's loss of business, there's loss of revenue, there's loss of banking, there's loss of communication, could be loss of 911 services. The community of Grand Cache a couple of years ago was absolutely completely cut off when somebody damaged the fiber optic, and people could not get gas for their cars. They could not communicate. So the societal cost is absolutely stunning. It's very often, most of the time, nobody's injured or nobody's killed, but there is always, always, always a societal cost.
Mike, thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to send a message to my guest, Mike Sullivan, you can actually email him directly at info@utilitysafety.ca. Stories and Strategies is a co-production of JGR Communications and Stories and Strategies podcasts. We're hoping, just one call to action here, we're hoping that you will leave a rating for this podcast. Click 5-star. And if it was, if the host was maybe a little off, click 4-star. You can do something like that. We'd love it if you connected with us on Twitter. It's @stories_strats. We're also on Instagram under the company title. More than anything else, if you like this episode, would you do us a favor? Tell just one friend. Thanks for listening.